Well, hello, enrichment writing assignment fans. A quick tutorial about the writing assignment. After you've done your PDF uploads and you pick the paper that you want to do, you need to look through the paper, read the introduction, read the discussion so you can understand the overall study, and then you're just going to analyze one figure. It says read through the first data figure and write up a section on the first data figure only for the following items in your own words, no quotes allowed. Okay, what does that mean? First data figure, you want to find a figure that has an experiment in it. So it can't be a flow chart. And so you want to look for a graph, or you want to look for like a bar graph, line graph, or a PCR gel, or something that you can understand. So some of you guys pick some really difficult papers, which I know when you're just picking looked really interesting. But if you can't find a figure that's easy enough to analyze, then it's going to just really hurt you on the write up. So while you're looking through your paper, if nothing is simple, let me know and you can switch papers so that you can choose something that's much easier. For example, I'm going to show you a figure from an article, not one that you guys picked. I just pulled it up as an example. So here you go. Here's figure 2. Figure 1 of this paper was just a flow chart of how the study was done. So that's not an experiment. And this one has A, B, and C. So for us, you would pick figure 2A only, or figure 2B only, or figure 2C only. You wouldn't be required to do A, B, and C. So you don't have to do all the panels. You would just do one, because this is one experiment. This is another experiment, and this is a third experiment. Now, if you're looking at something like immunofluorescence where they're giving you a bunch of panels, then that's one whole experiment because they're comparing the panels. So if you're confused, we can always do a quick zoom to make sure you're doing the right thing. But that being said, figure 2A totally sucks. You don't want to do figure 2A. Look at, you'd have to talk about every single lane. You need to walk through the figure lane by lane, every single little thing they did. You have to talk about all of these different items for each of these genes. No, you can't just give me an overall. They found things go up and down, right? You have to tell me all the details to get all the points. So this would suck. You would not want to do this. So let's go to something that's a little more reasonable. All right, so here we go. We have a nice paper right here. And the first figure is not a real experiment. It's a promoter region. It's a sequence. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff in it and it explains all of this, but it's mostly like, well, this is a construct. This is a construct. This was a start site. Here's a start site. So the start sites are an experiment, but they're hard to understand. So you read through this figure legend and you're like, I'm not sure I could do this figure. So you can move on. So you don't have to do the first one, but you should do an early one in the paper in case you need try number 2, which is, right, a redo of the assignment, but not of the same figure. So I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's say, ooh, here's figure 2. Look, it's a bar graph. Yay. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bars. That's okay. We could totally talk about that. We look at the figure legend. It gives us a bunch of information, describes what they did. Okay, so figure 2 is what? Figure 2, promote concentration, promote transient transfection. Okay, so just in case we're not sure exactly what transient transfection is, let's go look at materials and methods. Here's materials and methods, right? There's that 5' race from figure 1. Here's how they made their plasmids. PCR, ooh, PCR, how fun. Ooh, transfection. So we read through this region to see exactly how they did transfections. And then we would walk through this figure. So we're going to say we picked figure 2 because this one is a nice bar graph. It's well explained. Everything's labeled. The figure legend looks good. So we're going to go back to our assignment. which remember, this is in the syllabus and it should also be copy and pasted into the actual assignment upload thing. All right, first data figure, in our own words, what's the hypothesis of the figure? Okay, so we come back here and we need to find where they talk about figure 2 in the text. So you might have to scroll up or down, right? Depending on how the figures fit into your paper. There's, let's see, identification of the promoter, that's figure 1. Call out right there. Figure 2. Okay, so this is what we need to read. Yay, figure 2. So we would read that and then we'd say, okay, what should we do? We got to figure out how to describe this. So what's the hypothesis? Well, not every article is just going to tell you our hypothesis is. Right? They might say, we think, blah, blah, blah. The authors had to think something or they wouldn't be able to do this experiment. So for this one, they'd say something like, we think, because of our data, maximal activity would occur at our -399 piece. We're going to pretend like we have the foresight to guess what's going to happen. Or we could just say, we think, we hypothesize that there will be promoter activity. It will drive transcription in some place within this 1,000 base pairs upstream of the start site of transcription. Okay, so they had a hypothesis. They might not spell it out. You might have to infer what it is. So that's when we come to number B. Number B, what question did they ask to address the hypothesis in the figure? Sometimes this one's easier for you to think about first before you do the hypothesis. The question and the hypothesis are super similar. Hypothesis is a statement of what they think is going to happen. Could be if then. It's nice to put them in an if then statement because then it's a good hypothesis. The question is, what do we think will happen? So if we were going to look at, if we were going to look at our, our figure here, the question, there could be lots of questions. Will this piece drive transcription? Will this big piece drive transcription over the control with no promoter? Will any of the smaller pieces drive transcription at higher levels or lower levels? If we put this piece of DNA in our plasmid, our expression vector, will it drive transcription? That's our question. We think that if we put this in our expression vector, it will drive transcription. This is our promoter. That would be a hypothesis. So you might have to figure it out. It might not tell you in the results. There's always questions, always a hypothesis. They wouldn't have randomly picked this one drug out of the billions out there on the market to test on cancer if they didn't think it would work, right? They're not just gonna, oh, let's try baking powder. We have no clue. You'd have to think, oh, baking powder is gonna do something. Or why would you bother doing the experiment if you don't think something's gonna happen? Okay. So you might have to figure that out. You probably do. Most articles are not going to say, we hypothesize that. So that's some thinking. Got to do some thinking. Okay, what did the study do in the figure? So that would be like this study. What did they do? They did a transient transfection of promoter deletion constructs. That's it. Easy. How did they do it? Right here. How did they do it? Well, how'd they do it? I don't know. Let's look in here. They took these constructs and they compared it to the basic control and they transiently transfected a cell line. What did they then do? I don't know. Oh, they compared it to PRLSC40 promoter enhancer and then they normalized it. And if we go back and look in the materials and methods, they use dual luciferase as their readout. Okay, so that all of that information should be in legend, results, materials and methods. Then what did they find? So that's where you go lane by lane. They found when they transfected the 1,075 base pair piece, they got about an average of 7-fold luciferase activity over basic. When they put in 674, they found 4 1/4. When they put in this, blah, 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 blah. And that should be spelled out in the results section. The author should have walked you through lane by lane in the results. Sometimes they don't, and that's a big no-no for them. That means they stunk it up and they didn't do their job, right? They might say, because if they're all similar, and depending, some articles have a word limit, so they can't walk lane by lane. They'd have to say, all of these constructs except 1075 and 399 had similar, not significantly different, about 4 to 4.5. This guy had about almost 8, and the big winner was over 12, the almost 400 base pair piece. Okay, but you really need to go lane by lane, or you're going to miss stuff and you're going to lose points, which is why you don't want to have 30 lanes. Okay, that's what did they find? And then what does it mean? It means that they found a region that drives transcription, that is a promoter. So it's similar to the results, but it's the conclusion, right? What does it mean? It means this piece is the best promoter of all these pieces. And that's what we want to study. Okay, so again, they might not say, in conclusion, we know blah. And for each figure, if they did a really good job of writing, they should bring it together at the end of that section. Not all papers will. If I were reviewing, I wouldn't let it through. And then, right, we're going to do your spell check and your grammar check. And then when I say upload it to Turnitin, just upload to the Canvas assignment. It'll automatically send it in through Turnitin for you. No problem whatsoever. So let's go down. So these are the rules, same. You guys have these in the syllabus. I copy and pasted right out of there. Right. This is all about all the points you're going to get for in the rubric, which should also hopefully be in Canvas by now. Maybe not. I might have to set it up. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. If you plagiarize, you get a 0, but then you get 2 more chances because it's really hard to write science stuff in our own words. That's why we're doing this assignment. So don't get all panicky and don't lose your mind, right? You only lose 5 points each round, and you cannot use quotes. There's never, ever, ever any quotes in science writing unless they're saying so-and-so said, you know, I love you or whatever. So no quotes allowed. It doesn't matter if you cite them. It doesn't matter how well everything's set up. I will give you a 0 because I said no quotes allowed because we don't do quotes in science writing. So all of these papers, read through any of them and you will not find quotes. So we're not doing English. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And so then here's an example, right? If you're for a hypothesis for a figure, again, generic figure, they might not state it, but they had to test for something. Drugs and cancer, they'd have to think it worked, or why would they test it? So then they'd say, if we give these cancer patients this drug, they will have smaller tumors within 3 months. If we give this drug to a mouse, it will process sugar better. If we give this rat a lobotomy, it will no longer have seizures, like whatever, okay? Might not say it, but you got to figure it out from what the study that they did. What did they test for? What did they use? What did they find? Ooh, hypothesis. And then the question, right? It's just written as a question. If we give cancer patients this drug, will they have smaller tumors in 3 months? So again, sometimes the question's easier to start with, then you can come up with a hypothesis just for that figure. So they're not trying to cure cancer. So don't say, if we give these patients this drug, they want to cure cancer. No, they're looking at them in 3 months. Will it get smaller? That's what they study. Okay, so what did the study do? What does the graph represent? Like the test they did? Yes. So they did PCR, they did a polymerase chain reaction, or they gave the drug through an IV, or they gave the drug as a tablet, or they made patients do treadmill tests to look at heart rate. They made them do sit-ups, they made them fast, whatever they did. What's the procedure? What if none are mentioned? It has to be. It might not be mentioned in the figure or the legend. They'll probably list the name. That's where you have to go to materials and methods, and you need to read that section. They probably won't, will not say, we did it this way, but it'll be described in, catching my typos, the legend or materials and methods. So if you were doing a treadmill test, you'd say we made the patient run on a treadmill for 30 minutes at 5 miles per hour. Man, I stink at typing. With the ramp set at medium uphill, the patient had electrodes recording their heart rate, their oxygen concentrations, or whatever it was, a breath rate, whatever they were testing. Whatever's in that table or that graph is what you have to talk about. That's what they tested. That's what that's how they did it, right? You can't just say they ran on a treadmill. Well, then how'd they get their data, right? They had to have the electrodes, they had to have the breathing thing, they had to have, a bungee cord, whatever they did. Okay, what did they find? Yeah, what happened? So don't give them the overall conclusion. Don't say they all sucked. Nobody can work out. Everybody's a wimp, right? You say, well, some of them puked, 13 died, 42 passed out. For each of them, they recorded the heart rate, and the puker's heart rate had rates between this. The dead guys had no heart rate. The ones that passed out had heart rates of that right before they keeled over, blah, 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 blah. This was their oxygen concentration for the puked guys, the 13 that died, the blah, blah, all of it, anything in that figure. That's why you want to pick a simple figure. You don't want to talk about 25 parameters. It's too much. It's too hard. This isn't supposed to be that kind of assignment, right? Even that bar graph with lots of bars, you want 3 bars. Okay, totally simple is better. And then what did it mean? Again, just this figure. And again, you might have to do some extrapolating to figure it out. The article might not spell it out. What does this mean overall? Well, what does it mean? If none of these people did well, they're puking, they're dying, and they're passing out, we'd say that the people that did this treadmill test are out of shape, or they can't run well, they won't pass a treadmill test, they have poor heart health, whatever that outcome. Were they looking for oxygen saturation? They have poor oxygen saturation. That's why they fainted, right? So you're telling them exactly what they found here, but what does that mean? So if you gave the people a drug and the tumors got smaller, the results are how small did they get? And you list all the different people and all the sizes, and depending on if they took this much drug, it was this much smaller. If they took up this much drug, it was this much smaller. So then what does it mean? It means this drug helps make tumors smaller, right? It could be used. It could go to clinical trials. It worked in a mouse, or it worked in the clinical trial. It's going to go to FDA approval, like whatever it means, whatever the conclusion is. So that's your tutorial. You got to read, you got to think. You can't do this super quick. Spend a little bit of time, do a good job in your own words. Make sure you're in your own words. Don't use big science words. If it sounds really, really good the way they wrote it, rewrite it like a 3rd grader. I want to know if you understand it. I don't need to know if they understood their study. Well, I hope they did. Some of them, you never know. But I want to know that you could write it in your own words. You could tell another colleague about it. You could tell another student in 360. So you're not talking to people with PhDs. Doesn't have to be a literary marvel. I'd rather have nice, simple sentences in your own words than what they said, because then you get a 0, and that stinks. But again, it's okay. There's no reason to panic. This is where we get to learn, because it is hard. So good luck. You could do it. And sorry, this was boring. I didn't have any good sound effects. Oh, wait, that's out. Where am I? Help. Stop video. No. Yes. Okay, guys. Bye. Oh, no, that's stop video. Stop recording.